You're listening to the Movies, Myth, and Media podcast with Trulin, Bo, and Joe. In today's episode, we'll be discussing the Knives Out trilogy, directed by Rian Johnson. Well, hello and welcome to the Movies, Myth, and Media podcast, where three dudes talk about those three things. And today we are talking about the Knives Out trilogy by Rian Johnson.
I'll start by telling you where Wake Up Dead Man falls in my ranking of the trilogy.
There we go.
I can give a brief reason why. So my favorite still is Knives Out, the first one, followed by Wake Up Dead Man, followed by Glass Onion.
Same,
yeah.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah, yep. Absolutely.
Oh, there's our episode.
Yeah, that's it. All right, cut, all print, right. Send it to Spotify. We're good. No, yeah, I am. I'll be honest, guys. I actually didn't enjoy the entire first half of Glass Onion. I don't mean to come out the gate negative, but I also think it's a good just talking point in general, because I don't know if you guys feel the same. But, Glass Onion kind of relies on this really interesting twist that I think is very interesting, but it doesn't even happen until like halfway through the movie, because right. the first half is all just kind of like, I mean, there's intrigue, but most of it's just like, what's going on? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, it's funny watching Blanc, with these like interactions with these, crazy characters. But it's really not until like halfway through the movie when it's like, oh, that's what's been going on this whole time. That's so interesting. So for me, it's like half the movie's good, the other half is just okay.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Glass Onion's definitely the weakest. And for me, it's all about characters. The characters in Knives Out in that first one, I think, are like so memorable. And not to say that I think the characters are bad. This is like picking the worst of a great trilogy, right? It's like, which is the worst Lord of the Rings, Like, it's like they're all three great movies. A bad Knives Out movie is still a great movie. But I feel like the characters in Glass Onion are the weakest, for sure. And I think that even though what's interesting is that the characters across all three movies, generally, like all of the suspects, are all pretty terrible people. There's just something about, in particular, that family in Knives Out that is just so compelling to watch. Every interaction between every character is so fun to watch. The big spats they get into is so good. Every actor is really good. Obviously, Chris Evans, after having come off of this just like incredible tear of Captain America and then being this just absolute asshole, it was like pitch perfect, and he plays it so well. But yeah, for me, it's a character thing across the three movies is kind of how I rank them.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
Oh, you say about that first half of Glass Onion, and I agree. First of all, that it's between Glass Onion and Wake Up Dead Man, at least it's a tight grouping. Knives Out, I'd say, is still kind of a leap and a bound ahead of them because they're all amazing. So I did not in any way dislike Glass Onion. In fact, that first half of Glass Onion, I actually love how that pairs with the second half of the movie, because you're watching it familiar with Knives Out, where the story kind of starts rolling pretty quickly. You open up with that shot of Christopher Plummer with his throat cut, and then from there, they're questioning they call the family to the house and they're questioning them, and then Blanc is there pretty quickly. With Glass Onion, it's a murder mystery because it's a quote-unquote Knives Out mystery, which I'm going to get to that marketing term. And you're introduced to like this, like, okay, we're here on this island as part of a murder mystery party. And then you find out pretty quickly that like it's been planned. Edward Norton's character,
Miles Braun,
is the one who's going to die. and then he dies because Benoit Blanc solves the case, and then kind of blows it wide open. And so you're left with like, okay, what are we left with? We know that we've been building up this tension between this group of people. They're in this secluded place, but you're also like unsure of what is coming next. Who's gonna die? Yeah. What is the mystery around the death that's going to happen? And so I think almost more than any other movie, you're like unsure of like, okay, so who's gonna be the one that dies, and why? And so that first half of the movie just building up that tension until the cut to, you know, a few weeks earlier. I'll say even earlier than that, the cut to like when the lights go out, and then that's real. I mean, okay, even before that, when Duke drinks his drink, his pineapple drink, and dies. So there's a little break in the tension there, a little climax, and then the lights go out, another climax, and then she dies, another climax, and then take it all the way back a couple weeks earlier. I think that was very original among the three movies, and just as a story, as a story structure in general. And so I loved that. However, I liked Wake Up Dead Man better. But Bo, I wanna get your thoughts.
Oh yeah, well, you know what's funny is I was watching it the second time through, and exactly that spot where you're talking about when like the lights go out or whatever, I'm just like, dude, there's so much shit happening in this movie. There's a lot of moving pieces, and granted, I will say Glass Onion is fun. Like I love the opening scene, the opening scenes, because it's like, you remember it's like COVID era, and like the politics still feel like so fresh that in some of the dialogue and stuff and the way they talk about it, and I really loved seeing Blanc in like the bathtub, just like being a kid and playing a game, and his partner is Hugh Grant. Mm-hmm. Such good casting. I want there to be like more of him, and if they do it like a fourth one. But yeah, I will say the acting in Glass Onion, for whatever reason, and when it's funny, and I don't want to name specific names, but a lot of those actors I really like and everything else, but there's just like one of them in that movie who like really, I don't know what it was about their performance specifically, but there's a scene when like the two kind of like main characters are like talking, and one of them like, it feels awkward to me, you know what I mean? And I don't know if it's because maybe it's just because the set is so inorganic, because it's literally a glass onion, you know what I mean? And maybe that's just like throwing me off or whatever. But there's something about, whereas as Truman was saying, and we can all vouch for this, in Knives Out, the first one, man, one of the reasons why it's so good isn't just because the cast is phenomenal and have great chemistry, but because the way everyone has to play each other from the get-go is so visceral, and the way Blanc like sits in the back, and because he wants them to play their hand first. He wants to listen as much as he can before he jumps in and starts, you know, like really trying to like play these like personalities and try to, you know, deduce what's actually true and what they're saying without stepping on too many toes and just like outright pissing people off. It's so well done, and you can feel kind of like that I don't know, that real tension of kind of like a mental joust every time he like steps up and starts talking to these guys. So yeah, of course there's so much to say about all these movies, but I really think the way watching Blanc engage with all of these different characters differently is such a treat. And you can even see, who's the gentleman who plays the detective? He was in Get Out.
Lakeith Stanfield.
Yeah, he does a really good job too. Some of the subtleties he does.
Their chemistry is so good. You can tell that they've done cases together before. Like, they have this organic chemistry that's so good. I noticed in particular is the part where he calls Blanc Benny, and I was like, they're buddies. They're buddies.
Yeah. Yeah. What a joy. And I will say, Wake Up Dead Man was, and here's where you have to give Rian Johnson. You have to give him the credit, because the first movie, everything about it is just immaculate as far as like just a a Knives Out thriller like mystery goes, that the fact that he was able to change up the sequels enough that every movie has its own unique thumbprint while staying true to like the Blanc character, kind of like holding them all together, is phenomenal. Incredible work.
I agree.
Yeah, hard agree for sure. I was thinking, so I think Glass Onion maybe has the most to talk about because there is maybe I don't want to say controversy, but there is just a lot to talk about it with its structure. And I just find it interesting that like the movie itself is like also a glass onion, where it's like like these layers that you're peeling back, but like it ultimately is just that Miles Braun is an idiot. Like that's like the core of the movie. And I love that even in that first puzzle box scene, like the opening sequence, which I think is edited and paced really well with them like cutting back and forth between all the characters trying to figure out this box. But one like ongoing thing is that Duke's mom like knows, like it's showing that like this puzzle isn't actually as smart as it thinks, as Miles thinks it is, right? Because like the thing to get into the box is like do a magic eye, which is like a book for magic eye is like books for children, right? So it's like all these like very simple things that like just a regular person could figure out. And I just love that they like use it as a joke, as like a comedic bit that she keeps saying the answer and Duke yells at her. But I think it's a really good way to show like who Miles Braun is before we ever even see him on screen. And then the first time we see him, one of his first lines is he uses the word Embreathiate, which is and then like
and it's so
Blanc
insufferable,
back,
dude.
Yeah, like Blanc calls back to him about how stupid. That's like a whole part of it. But I really love that first sequence just like fully sets up, like essentially lays the foundation for the whole movie just in that first few minutes, which I just think is so great.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember watching that thinking like, dude, Duke's mom is like OP, man. But I didn't make that connection that's where the metaphor begins right there. Yeah. No, I do think that was one of the really clever parts about Glass Onion was that whole metaphor. And I wanted to ask, for you guys, who was like your favorite like suspect? Right, and maybe not even like the culprit, the person who actually had like done it, but is there like one character in particular in all three trilogies that you have I don't want to say a fondness for because they might be a despicable person, but you really just like the character, you know?
I would say probably. I mean, I really like Father Judd in Wake Up Dead Man. I just find that Josh O'Connor's performance like so endearing and so sweet. And I love that kind of similarly, there's a really great line of his very early on that I think like really describes his ethos and kind of the way that his character moves through the world, which is the idea that like, Christ isn't here to put his hands up. He's here to put his hands out and to welcome people. It's less about fighting, more about loving. And you just see him really stick to that ethos like all through the movie. And every opportunity he has to fight, he chooses not to. And I just really love that, watching him kind of go through that. And in particular, there's the one scene that I think is just like so stunning when him and Blanc are like tearing the office apart, and then he calls the concrete company or the construction company and ends up like, he's like being an investigator, and then he has to like switch into priest mode right away, and he does it like without missing a beat, and just sees that there's this person in need, and whatever it is that he's dealing with isn't as important as what this person is needing in that moment. And just really, really, really excellent writing, and Josh O'Connor's performance is so good. That sequence I think is so good, and especially you have the kind of dynamics of Blanc and Father Judd and their kind of opposing forces in terms of their worldview. They're both very kind men, I think, at their core, and so I think that they relate to each other in that I think that they just move through the world with kindness, and so I think when that happens, Blanc doesn't try to like resist that moment from happening or try to stop it from happening. I think that he sees that that's an important thing for both Father Judd and the girl that's on the phone. I think that's like like one of the best scenes of the whole trilogy, and that like really solidified my love for that
I
guy.
I have a quick Mythic plug, and then Joe, I want to hear who your favorite suspect was. But when I talk about myth, we're really just talking about common human patterns that everyone experiences or at least witnesses in their life, and for whatever reason, it makes a story resonate. So when you're saying something's mythic, you're just saying it's good storytelling. And I really like that part of storytelling where you have Father Judd, who's used to guiding people, right? He's pastor, priest, father, right? So he's used to being the people who take them on their journey, right? But in this case, it's Blanc who helps him on his journey.
Sure.
So he sits in that church, and he's completely lost as someone who's spent his recent career guiding people, and now he needs to be guided by someone who doesn't possess any of the same, doesn't come from the same worldview. You know what I mean? And you see that a lot in myth, where usually what's missing from the protagonist is brought up in a different character, and that kind of helps them along. Because I love that monologue of Blanc when he's asked, like, how does it feel to be in the church? He's like, oh, you want me to tell you? I'll tell you.
Yeah.
But it's very clear that they come from two different dynamics entirely, but very complementary. And Blanc helps him on this big journey to proving his innocence. So
yeah, I think I think Trulin hit it out of the park with his analysis of Father Judd as a top character in this trilogy, and that scene in particular did it for me, man. And it was, I want to add that, the first time watching it, he's talking to this woman Louise at the company, and is being kind of played off as a joke because she's kind of talking over him, and he's like in a hurry. He really wants to get this information, and she's just, it's like the sloth on Zootopia, right, at the DMV. We're just trying to get in and out and trying to get what we need, and at first she's just kind of being like chatty, and then and it's being played very humorously. And then when she says, Father Judd, can I ask you a question? He's like, yeah. And then she just kind of takes that breath. And then then the joke just kind of like stops there. And just how quickly it turns from like a joke into like the most poignant moment in the movie.
Yeah,
I
so
think,
good.
Again, it's that kind of that dichotomy that happens just kind of like back to back, and I think it was masterfully done, and I love this time, my second time watching it, seeing Josh Connor's his facial kind of transformation and his body language transform as he not only realizes that like, wait, what I'm doing right now isn't as important as what this person needs, but like what I'm doing with myself in this case, like my being in this case isn't where I need to be. I need to get out of this case, even though it directly affects his life, and I need to start being with people who need Christ, who need guidance, and who need comfort, and he does it, and I this will lead into my favorite character pick is each of the movies has this person that Blanc is working with that is very, like you were saying, very comparable to Blanc, in that they are kindred spirits, in that they both see the world as good and see the good in people, and that so my pick is Ana de Armas from Knives Out. I think she has this kind of like just like crystalline purity to her that just like Father Judd is just like untarnished throughout the whole movie. She is not made cynical or not made a worse person by the things that she goes through. she and it's interesting. Like if she is made a better person, it's like almost hard to tell because she was just such a good person kind of going into it, and so it's like like the main difference is that like now she's like super rich at the end of
Yeah.
of the movie, and you're left not knowing like is she going to help out the family? And I kind of thought my thought is like I think she probably will. At least some of them, in some degree, but not necessarily in the way that they might want the help, and maybe they won't even accept. But I think her heart would be open and willing for that. And if it's not too, well, actually, Bo, we need to hear your pick.
Oh, mine was Father Judd too. Yeah.
He's so good.
Yeah. We've talked about him plenty, but yeah. Father Judd, there's something just really endearing about that character. And one thing I want to say about all three characters, because Joe, you're talking about it with Marta and Andy, I believe, in Glass Onion too.
Mm-hmm.
They all
Helen.
What's that?
Helen.
Andy's the sister that she's.
Right.
Helen is the name.
Helen. You're right. Thank you. But all three of them are ultimately proven innocent, obviously with the support of Blanc, but also because they're all true to who they are, true to their authenticity and their intentions. And what's interesting is the word hypocrite actually was used in theater. It was like a theater term for all the other characters in a story. And you were a hypocrite if you weren't living your story. So if you're in someone else's, isn't that interesting?
I did not know that's where that word came from. That's awesome.
And so literally, everyone else are hypocrites because they're not being true to their nature. Unlike the three, I don't want to say protagonists because it could be Blanc too, but the three unique leads for the trilogy. Yeah. And what's funny too is Marta. We can talk about Marta in a sec, but both Helen and Father Judd have something similar where even though they're all three of them are still flawed, obviously, but Helen and Andy both shared the same thing where like their anger and their outbursts of rage actually forwarded them to I guess the solution of the story, right? The resolution.
Yeah.
Like when I think it's Andy when she gets really pissed because she lost the letter and she throws that bookshelf over and all of a sudden, boom, there it is. There's that letter.
It. Yeah, there's
right?
that napkin.
And then same thing at the end when Helen starts crashing all the glass, like she's just pissed, right? And then she throws the whatever that special gas that Miles. Yeah. And then Father Judd too. Last thing I'll say, Father Judd too, with his inability to not go to war for what he loves and threaten Josh Brolin's character like on camera. Of course, he didn't know he was recorded, but that also ultimately led to the forwarding of the plot. So yeah,
that's awesome. I do love Marta a lot too. I think there's one moment in particular. She's got a lot of great moments. Obviously, she has that really great physical quirk.
It's so good.
Of her vomit, which they use to just great effect over and over again. Every time they use it, I just get a huge smile because it's just used so well. But the moment where I think that like I really connect with her as a character is when she's going over like what happened with Harlan, and the just dread on her face when she notices that the bottles are wrong and that she thinks that she gave him the wrong medicine, and just the way the tears well up in her eyes. She's an amazing actress. Obviously, she works a lot, as she should. But that whole moment and then him telling her the plan and how she can get out of this, and then she walks out the door, and then of course goes back in and then sees Harlan kill himself, and then she shuts the door, and then she like steals herself, and it's like she takes a breath, and then she like gets to work. That whole sequence of hers is so great. She's an incredible character. I love Marta.
Yeah, and what really got me watching it this time for the rewatch was her, and I think this. I mean, this is kind of like part of it, but like it was like her inability to let herself. I mean, and it's represented physically with the vomiting, but it's this inability to do something that's against her character or against her moral judgment. And when she is with Fran in that abandoned building, and she thinks that Fran is, accusing her of doing it, and you did this, so she steps back, kind of like recoils, and in a very, very quick shot, you see her kind of like analyze the situation, but she can't not, help her.
Right.
Even though she knows that this is going to mean that, ambulances are going to come, because obviously she called 911. Blanc is just right outside. He's going to know. This is it for her. She's done. This is the end. But because she has to help this person that she didn't really have that much of a connection to, as we saw throughout the movie. It's not like they were like palling around. Mm-hmm. They knew each other because they were both working for Harlan, but it was not her like, oh, I need to help out my friend whom I love. I need to help out this person who is dying, and I know what to do.
And it's especially effective in that movie too because of the juxtaposition between the two families, and because one family literally has everything, right, like an empire, but they don't have each other. They don't have any kind of like sense of eros or connectiveness or love just in general with each other. Whereas the opening scene with Marta's family, you can tell how much they love each other because it's the scene where her little sister's like listening to, like a murder podcast or whatever, and her mom's like, yo, turn that off. And then she like has to yell at her. And, they get a little heated, but you can tell the family is so good because one, the mother is sitting there going to bat for Marta, right? But two, the little sister apologizes, man. That's a good family right there. You know what I mean? Like to not let your pride or, like your fear of being, whatever, like you apologize to your sister, and she did it on her own accord too. The mom didn't even tell her to apologize. Just like that opening scene when they're in this tiny kitchen, that looks like it could be from the 70s. Clearly these people don't come from money, but they have each other. And that plays out again and again, because in that same room that you described with I think it's the morning nurse, when Marta chooses to save her, even though she thinks that, Hugh did this or you did this, right? The opposite happens with Chris Evans. Chris Evans baits her there to kill her. Chris Evans' character from that other family. And in that, like, deep, cavernous, like, dark room is where kind of, like, the tables turn between the two families because, that ultimately ends up vindicating Marta because she gets a toxicology report and all that jazz. And, yeah, it's so hard to top that movie because everything just works so well together. There's no, and Rian Johnson doesn't even waste time. It's like every shot's intentional. Like, so we're talking about how the grandpa like kills himself. There's that scene where he's talking in the room with Marta, and you can see the knife that he's later in the future going to cut his throat with. It's literally framed across his throat on a stand.
Yeah, while he's talking, about ransom specifically.
While he's talking about ransom. Yes, so good.
So good.
And then the eyes. Sorry, I got a list of these for the first one. The glass
eyes
onion
behind him, like in his office.
It's so good. Obviously, the church in Wake Up Dead Man, the glass onion, in the house in Knives Out, they're all definitely characters in their own right, like these settings. But man, this house is so good. The eyes, there's the knives too, right, everywhere. There's another one. if it's okay, actually, I made a list. I just want to reference it real quick because it's so good. Okay, the painting of the person walking out of the picture frame where the secret, the fake
wall.
When the trick wall, so good. And then I mentioned the knives, but there's also the golden knife that the lawyer uses to open the will. That's like the grandfather's knife, severing his kids from him. That scene where he picks up that knife.
Yes.
So good. And then last thing I'll say is, of course, the dogs. The dogs are like, obviously are telling you from the start, like, Ranson's a piece of shit and Martha's good. And Blanc obviously is narrating that for you. There's that one scene with the footprints where he's like, "Oh, did it rain recently?" And Martha's like, "Oh shit!" Starts like walking fast over her friends, like, "Martha, stop!"
What's
right?
that?
And Blanc could have like approached her then and there, but right at that moment, the dogs come up and are like being really loving on her, and he lets it go because he's like, I there's just something about this girl that I trust. Yeah. So dude, that whole house is fantastic, though. You could also one last mythic plug here. You could also see the dogs as being the grandpa's like instincts, because in fairy tales and myths and dreams and whatnot, animals are usually representative of like a person's instincts. And it's interesting how his dogs love her, and he gives his inheritance over to her, and can say go to hell to Ranson, you know what I mean? They do not care for that guy. So,
well, yeah, and there's the whole plot point too of that. It's not so subtly spelled out that he picks her because she can beat him at Go, but she just says it quickly. That when he asks, he says, "Why can't I ever beat you at that?" And she says, "You're playing to beat me. I'm playing to make a beautiful pattern."
Yes.
And it's just the way that she sees the world. He finds that so unlike his family, his children, and rightfully completely endears herself to him. And I love that. I feel like that's the moment, and maybe that's not the moment. He decided before that, but like that realization of like why she can beat him at Go. It's not because she necessarily has a sharper mind, but because she sees the world differently.
And yes, absolutely, 100%. I want to take that to another level where she has her own vision of the world too, and that's something that none of his kids have. Like he tells his oldest son, it's like, you got to go do you, like
do something.
You can't just wear my suit after I die. You can't just like and that's why he cuts them all off, is because they're like he loves them all, but gosh, you guys got to go find yourselves, Whereas Marta, she's her own person, She can see the world differently, like you said, and she plays it her way, Whereas all the rest of those guys are hypocrites, as we talked about. Yeah, I love that scene though.
Yeah, Bo, do you have much to say about? Because I know one of the kind of design elements in this home is the idea of like memento mori, right? Because there's like a lot of skull imagery and paintings with skeletons and things like that. And I wonder if, as our myth man, if you have much in regards to that.
I absolutely do. Yeah. Unlike the other two movies, this first one has a really invests in the death scene of the victim.
Right. Yeah.
And what's incredible about it is, he obviously is at the end of his life, but the way he faces death in that moment that's how that's the dream. That's how any of us would want to greet death. And the way he's able to not only keep his composure, but consider Marta. And he did ultimately kill himself, and it was for her, to her benefit.
Yeah.
And I was really touched by that scene, and the death aspect especially. And what's interesting, and this is kind of a big mythic plug, but since you asked, I'll explain it a little bit. What's interesting is his relationship with Marta in general is what makes that scene so good, because Marta's playing kind of several roles. One role that I think she's playing is, if you've ever heard of the term anima and animus, it's kind of like an analytical psychology term where the anima or animus is going to be your inner. If you're a man, it would be your inner feminine. If you're a woman, it would be your inner masculine, or whatever presenting you are. All it is the opposite of whatever gender you present, right? So for traditional men, the inner feminine is called the anima, and the anima is the guide. It's the guide to your true self, and another name for it would be your soul, right? Okay. And so in this scene, I think Marta is kind of like playing his soul, because their relationship is non-sexual, but it's very, very endearing. And the myth of Parzival, his Blanc Fleur, it's French for white flower. Is this woman in the Percival? It's one of the Grail myths, from King Arthur and stuff. Yeah. Percival was one of the knights who encountered the Grail, and when he was really down, he'd go visit his Blanc Fleur, and their relationship wasn't sexual though. It was just it was like, she was his soul in a metaphorical sense, and Marta is that to this guy, because it's not sexual, but there's definitely like a deep love and connection there, and she guides him to what he's been missing, and you can see it missing in his family, which is not only that kind of like pure innocence, but that love that he wasn't able to give to his family. And right. You can see him realize that a little too late. He tries to give it at the end, right? And ultimately he does, because he trusts her, right? He trusts her with his life after he goes. That's why she's standing there on the balcony at the end, because he trusts her to make the decisions that he couldn't, right? And pass that along. So that's one way of looking at it, is the anima. And there's one quote from the lawyer that I really liked, when they're like, "Oh, was Marta like banging our dad or whatever?" He's like, "You telling me that they can't, like, hard work and good humor can't do it?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's like the only sort of motivation that drives money, right? In their mind, it's
exactly
sex and money.
And that's what's interesting is there are only two characters who can come through the secret passage, or the fake window or whatever, and those are the two younger folks that were closest to the grandpa, which of course is Chris Evans and Marta, and I think that bears symbolic significance as well. But when you look at that statement of hard work and good humor, Chris Evans' character absolutely has good humor. That guy is funny. You know what I mean?
So
like
funny.
that scene where he like gets when they're all berating Marta in the front, and he pulls up in the car, and he's like, I hope you guys learned something from this, and drives off. It's so good. But he doesn't have that hard work, and obviously that ability to just love and genuinely care for people. Anyways, I got more to say about that. If we wanted to go, I could talk about how Marta is also the Great Mother, because the Great Mother is both the giver of life and the taker. She is womb and tomb, and as his kind of like soul in his later age, he's given her this beautiful life up in that secret top room where they just get to play games together, and it's just a beautiful relationship, and they do such a good job of displaying that with that game. But also the way he talks to her is like how he's talking to his death in that scene.
Okay. Yeah.
So anyways, that's my mythic plug. Thank you for asking, Trillin, and just alley-ooping me on that. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Anytime at all.
Bo, do you have? Well, I want this to. I just want to bring this up, I guess. So I want to talk a little bit about Blanc himself.
The detective, or I guess he's an investigator, private investigator, either way.
Well, and it's interesting that you kind of make that distinction, because when you compare him with all the other detectives in fiction, in literature, and in movies, or in pop culture, he's very kind of singular. He's very unique. You think of the Philip Marlowe in the Raymond Chandler novels, portrayed by like Humphrey Bogart in a couple movies. The Lou Archer, Bo, you read Zebra Striped Hearse. I'm a big fan of those books. but just kind of like the classic like hard-boiled detective, cynical, kind of chain-smoking, lone wolf type of detective is very much not Benoit Blanc's character. He still has this aura of mystery around him because we don't know much about him at all. We got a very lovely peek into his personal life in Glass Onion because he was literally at home just like the rest of us during the pandemic. But we don't know much about his background. He spoke a little bit about how Harlan knew his father, and his father
who was also a detective.
And but he, like, his personality himself, as we discussed before, like he is a kind person. He is not a if there's any cynicism in him, it is, I don't want to say suppresses it, but he instantly in each of these movies identifies the kind soul in the room, and it's the person who he's helping, or who's helping him with the investigation, so that helps. But he works with them, and he has all these other people he's investigating or being around. Even Geraldine in Wake Up Dead Man, she's kind of more his, police partner, detective partner, but it's Judd that he is, that he's drawn to. And so I agree with the assessment that Benoit Blanc has, a good heart, and he has good cheer and good humor, as we mentioned. And so I just think it's interesting, and kind of want to get your thoughts about him as an atypical detective, because he's not the hard-boiled, you have to pull back all these layers to get to the heart of gold. He has a heart of gold, and he kind of wears it on his sleeve.
Yeah. Well,
thoughts about that?
One thing about him that is one of the reasons why he's so charming, and I think one of the reasons why he doesn't get cynical, is because in every one of these movies he's telling you, I just love this. I love this game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he lives for it. He, especially in the first one, he keeps talking about just the gravitational trajectory of truth, and I love it so much because all Blanc is just a very astute, very aware, and very deep, a person who's very much deeply listening to not just people but everything around him, and he knows that that because he has that, he can just put himself in these situations, and truth, if he's listening, is going to present itself to him, and he can just follow that trajectory to wherever it leads. One thing I want to say too is, speaking to his kindness, I think his best scene, the scene that most displays his kindness, is when he's talking to the great grandma in the house. So just like so respectful, and really just treats her with such dignity that everyone else kind of just passes her by, thinks she's a kook, thinks she's, there's no one in there, and so the way he just treats her is so lovely. Last thing I want to say about Mont Blanc, I think that's a cologne. Blanc. Last thing I want to say about Blanc is he actually does have a little bit of overlap with Detective Cooper from Twin Peaks, which I don't want to talk about him too much because we'll save that for another episode. But another thing is, you can say Blanc is definitely in touch with his inner child because of how much fun he has in these movies, right? He is, he's tossing a coin, he's listening to music in the car when Marta goes into the basement, and every one of these movies, show tunes, right?
Show tunes specifically.
Yeah, the opening of the Glass Onion, he's playing like a board game in his bathtub or whatever. So he finds a way to make sure that he is still having a good time, and frankly, it's that connection. They call it the inner child or the divine child, but that is that's another kind of like mythic figure we could talk about if we wanted to. But he's very much in connection with that. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I think too, and when you compare him with the other male characters around him in particular, I think he's this really, I guess what we would consider an old-fashioned like style of masculinity, right? He's kind of like especially in that first sequence, that first scene of him in Knives Out, where he is just sitting back and listening, like he's the quiet man in the corner. Obviously, he does talk a lot eventually, but like just when you look at the other men around him, and especially I think in Wake Up Dead Man with Monsignor Wicks, and then the influencer guy and the sci-fi writer, like they're all what I think we could confidently describe as like toxic masculinity in this day and age. And I feel that Blanc is just the polar opposite of that. Really does lead with kindness, does very much have a sense of joy. I don't know, Bo, if you were thinking of the line where he's talking about gravity's rainbow. Mm-hmm. Is that what you were thinking of? Yeah, I just looked it up real quick because they're talking about the book Gravity's Rainbow, and he's like, yeah, I've never read it, I just like the title. And he says, it describes the path of a projectile determined by natural law. Et voila, my method. I observe the facts without biases of the head or heart. I determine the arc's path, stroll leisurely to its terminus, and the truth falls at my feet. I just love. Oh,
it's so good. Yeah. One last thing I'll say about Blanc, because you mentioned his kind of like old school masculinity, form of masculinity. One thing that is characteristic of him, and I think Agent Cooper again in Twin Peaks does this really well, but he is very good at knowing boundaries. Like, he is very good at like knowing where he stands, like where his self-respect and dignity ends and another person begins. Right. And watching him like weave that, especially when he has to kind of like poke and prod people, in a way that he never loses that. You know what I mean? Like he never like disrespects himself or other people, and that's it takes a lifetime to like learn that stuff, man. I mean, of course, some people are born with it and just know how to weave in social interactions. But really impressive the way he does it. What have you guys been up to? What's everyone? What video games are you playing? Books are reading?
I can start. I'm reading. I'm reading 2 books. I'm reading a religious book called Jesus the Christ, and I'm reading a book about current events called Everyone Who Is Gone Is Here. The Jesus the Christ obviously is about Jesus Christ. And Everyone Who's Gone Is Here is about the subtitle to that one is the making of, or the United States in the making of a Latin American crisis, something along those lines. Very interesting book. We talked a little bit. Well, we will talk a little bit about immigration in our episode today, very briefly, and that's what this book is about. The immigration crisis, the crisis for immigrants that we're experiencing in the country right now. So,
yeah. I want to say for our listeners, if you're not familiar with Jesus the Christ, it was written by a gentleman named James Talmage, and that is no small feat to try to, because that's a hefty book.
It's a tome.
Yeah.
They're both big books, and I'm reading them. I'm kind of like switching off nights reading them, and so it's very slow progress getting through either of these. But I'm sure hitting a lot of different topics.
That's fun. What about you, Trillian?
I'm listening. I'm an audiobook listener, so I'm listening to 2 different books right now. I'm listening to the 3rd book in the Witcher series. I'm going through all of those right now. And then, because I love The Witcher, although I don't love Netflix's The Witcher. I love Henry Cavill as The Witcher, but I don't love that show at all. And then I'm also for work / personal betterment, I'm listening to a book called Unreasonable Hospitality, which is written by a restaurateur. He's not a chef, but he is someone who runs restaurants. And it's just this idea of, it's exactly what it is. It's hospitality to a level that seems insane. And this restaurateur, I actually knew of him because he had been a host on a cooking show I liked, and he also is in The Bear at one point, and that book is talked about in The Bear. But but yeah, so I'm reading that. I'm kind of listening to that for work purposes. And then game wise, playing. Wayne and I got a lot of kind of family style games. We got because we got a Switch 2 for Christmas. We got the new Donkey Kong, and then he's getting into Super Smash Bros. And then I also got him Astrobot for the PlayStation 5, which technologically wise might be one of the most impressive video games I've ever played. It uses the controller in the most fascinating and original ways, because the PS5 controller has all this really cool tech in it where it's it has these things called adaptive triggers. So you'll get resistance in your triggers when you're doing certain actions. Not all games take advantage of all of the technology in the controller, but Astrobot is a Sony made 3D platformer. And it's also this massive celebration of PlayStation as a brand, and the collectibles in each level are these little robots, and oftentimes they will be dressed in the costumes of previous PlayStation characters. So you'll have Snake from Metal Gear Solid will show up, or the characters from The Last of Us will show up, or Uncharted, or Spider-Man, whatever it is. And so it's this massive 3D platform with this really cool technology in it, and then also it's this really great love letter to PlayStation, and that's been a ton of fun. I wasn't ever a huge PlayStation guy. This is only the second time I've owned a PlayStation in my life, so it's been fun to kind of learn some PlayStation history while also playing a truly excellent 3D platformer. That's been
That's awesome.
What I filled my time with.
Can I ask a question about Unreasonable Hospitality? How far
Yes.
into it are you?
Maybe a quarter or maybe a third even. But really, really loving it so far, man. It's a good book.
Did you? I mean, obviously, it sounds like a good read either way, right? But did you get into it because you've been I don't know, doing what you do for long enough that maybe it's starting to wear on you and you want to find a way to
it's actually because my boss had read it and he was like, hey, this is a really good book. I want you to read it too. And most of the time the books that he gives are, they're leadership management books, and oftentimes have good themes and good messaging, but sometimes narratively can get a little cringy. But I popped in my headphones, I hit play, and I recognized the guy's voice immediately, and I was like, I know who this dude is, and and so I immediately got hooked on it. But it's kind of an autobiography, but through the lens of this mantra of unreasonable hospitality. He's kind of explaining the kind of seeds that were planted throughout his life that led him to this mantra of unreasonable hospitality. And but yeah, it is also thankfully doing that for me, where yes, I've been doing what I've been doing for a long time, and so it is a nice way to kind of reframe what it is that I do, and I'm not just slinging sandwiches, but taking care of people. And yeah, it's been great so far.
Dude, can I just say, a respectable sandwich establishment is the crown jewel of any community. Any good restaurant, and even if it's a chain, that not all locations are the same.
Sure. Yeah.
But unfortunately, dude, right before I hopped on this call, I received word that my favorite pizza shop in town, the boss just got charged with 3 accounts of sexual assault, and I'm like,
oh no!
I literally sent in the chat the Darth Vader gif going, no. I'm so.
That is awful.
It's just the worst, man.
Oh gosh.
It's real good artisan pizza, and anyways. So yeah, what I've been reading, speaking of Darth Vader going no, I guess I've been reading a book called Jung in Star Wars by S.G. Ellerhoff, and it's really fascinating. It's just no one's done a deep dive, comprehensive Jungian analysis on Star Wars. If you don't know who Carl Jung was, he was supposed to be Freud's predecessor and or successor rather. He was supposed to be Freud's successor, but he broke off with Freud because he's like, I don't think everything's about sex, man. Anyways, and so yeah, he's got a lot of interesting stuff. But what's crazy about this book is so serendipitous. I met the author in person. I had no idea who he was. I just walked into Tsunami Books in Eugene, Oregon, and asked him about some author in kind of like the Jung sphere, and I'm like, I don't even know if he's gonna know who I'm talking about, but he's like, oh yeah, no, I actually don't think we have any of that in right now. And then we got talking, and he's like, yeah, actually, I'm a Jungian scholar, got a PhD in like Jungian studies or whatever, and I just published a book today, and it's called Jung and Star Wars, and I'm a huge Star Wars fan. So yeah, I got to go to the online book launch and just like listen to him talk about stuff, and I'm like almost halfway through the book, but there's something in there he said about C-3PO that freaking blew my mind. It wasn't like a too highbrow of a Zoom call, but I still put in the emoji of like the head being blown off because I'm like, that's crazy. Yeah, reading this, and then I'm reading what's it called? 78 Degrees of Wisdom by Rachel Pollock. That is like, I don't want to say the Bible of tarot cards, because that makes it sound like there's dogma behind tarot, and in fact the book would oppose that statement, I suppose. But it's just a really, really good book on tarot. Really, really interesting stuff. So
okay.
Yeah. Cool.
Speaking of tarot, real quick, have you watched Agatha All Along?
No, I haven't. Was it good?
It's very good, and there's a lot of tarot stuff in it, and a lot of it's very witchy. It's a very
It's actually
witchy
good.
show.
I can't believe
dude,
it's good.
There's a lot of really crap MCU stuff, and in particular MCU TV stuff. Agatha All Along is not one of those things.
All right. I still haven't seen Andor, so I know, dude. And here's the thing is I feel the same way about Andor, though. I just got so much like Star Wars fatigue.
I fully understand where you're coming from with that.
We'll save it for another conversation, but I can't stand production companies knowingly wasting my time. I'm like, dude, you think I don't have something better to do on a Friday night than watch some cyber hipster slow motion spin to evade a laser? What are we doing? I'm curious to know, Trulin, you're a movie guy. Is there anything in here? We've been talking for 48 minutes now. Is there anything in here about the movies that we haven't touched on yet that you'd like to get to?
I really love the music in these movies as well. And I'm let me just double check, but I'm 99% sure they're actually composed by Rian Johnson's brother. But they each have a very unique sound. I think maybe Wake Up Dead Man and Knives Out have the most similar sounding score. Because Glass Onion kind of has this like exotic, it almost feels James Bond in a way. It's kind of like, it's very like romantic, and has an exotic feel to it. Nathan Johnson, it's Rian Johnson's brother. Whereas the first one kind of has this like Victorian, it's very like string quartet forward. Anyways, I find the music really effective in these movies. That in Knives Out in particular, I think really, really nails the music. But and maybe it's just because Glass Onion is the most fresh in my mind, just because I watched it last night. But yeah, the like sweeping, that old school James Bond thing. Daniel Craig's James Bond movies didn't do this as much, but that old school like globe trotting exotic locations with like the big aerial shot over this stunning vista while this like romantic big orchestra track is playing. Like Glass Onion very much hits a lot there. The score of those hits a lot of those moments as well. But and I think that my final thing is the lighting in Wake Up Dead Man. There's obviously like the really big lighting moments where the light comes like seeping, comes pouring in through the window on the side of that first sequence with Blanc and Father Judd, where they're talking back and forth about their ideologies and about religion and stuff, and the lights shining through and pulling back and shining through, and then of course the final moment when Blanc is like doing his big reveal and the sun comes like pouring in and he turns and looks, and it's this really great moment. Good lighting in movies, especially in the streaming era, is like almost impossible to find. And so I was like very like taken back by how beautiful that movie was lit. I think the movie I had just watched previously to Wake Up Dead Man was Wicked Part 2, which is the most flat and boringly lit movie I have seen since Wicked Part 1. Which, like, why are those movies so poorly lit? Like, they're this magical, mystical, whimsical world, and they're so flat. That's a whole nother.
Dude,
That's a whole nother.
look at the Duffer Brothers, what they did with Stranger Things season 1 compared to like the
Oh my
finale.
gosh,
Like,
dude,
what are
so
we
true.
doing?
That's so true. That's so true. Okay, so I just like, so I've like that's something that's been like in my head a lot recently. Is just this idea of lighting and how people don't use lighting like they used to, and then like a ray of sunshine, Wake Up Dead Man like falls into my lap, and I was like, this. I like, I kept pausing. I kept telling Savannah, I was like, can we just appreciate how beautiful this sequence is right now? Like how beautiful this is lit. There's so many moments where like, or when Blanc and Father Judd are in the forest and in the
Dude.
darkness and the shadows from the trees and the wind and
And the
oh, gosh,
lantern.
it's just,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
yeah. Samson and the lantern, like it's just the lighting in that movie is astounding. Just and especially in a moment in cinematic and really maybe not cinematic, but certainly in a streaming era where things are just lit so poorly, it was just like such a breath of fresh air. Oh man, love it.
They're beautiful to watch.
Yeah.
I think you put it more perfectly, so I won't try and add anything to it. I'll just say like I agree. Each one was just like I loved just looking at the screen.
Oh yeah.
As like there's this YouTube channel that I love called it's Every Frame a Painting. It kind of talks about movie stuff and that's how I feel about these movies. Just like I can picture specific shots that aren't even like big scenes, but just the shot is whether it's the lighting or the blocking or what have you. But I couldn't agree more.
The forest, the dark forest sequences in Wake Up Dead Man are so well done. They're so intense, and there's something like so eerie about it. And I think about the music and just like the lighting in general. Honestly, the opening scene to the very first movie is one of my favorites because you have the Cerberus like hellhounds just like trotting down in slow motion in front of this house with the strings. Yeah,
it's so good.
It's
such a good way to set the tone. Like immediately, you're like within a few seconds, you're like, okay, I know what kind of movie this is.
Yeah, I do have a question for both of you because it's a storytelling device that Rian Johnson uses in all three of these movies. I have my feelings about it, but I'm curious to know what you think about it. Where he will show you an event and then show you that event again, but it looks completely different.
Sure.
So in a way, it's like you can't trust your eyes all the time when you're watching. Do you guys have any thoughts about that?
Interesting. Well, I know one moment that I think of is, I think that happens a lot in Glass Onion in particular, because we see things in the first half of the movie and then the second half of the movie they're recontextualized as we see things from Helen's perspective. I do think, though, I don't think he ever necessarily, like, cheats the viewer. Because, there's the sequence, there's a couple moments I'm thinking of. Number one, when Duke dies.
That's the biggest one.
You do see, in the initial telling, you do see Miles hand Duke the glass. And it's only when it's replayed again, and then for a third time. So they replay it the second time, and it looks like the Duke grabbed the wrong one. And then they replay it again, and Benoit Blanc's like, no, let's think about what we saw. Or did we just believe because he told us that? But in that initial viewing, you do see Miles hand Duke the glass, and he takes it. And so I don't think that he's more like omitting. It's kind of the omitting of the truth rather than lying to the viewer. Because there's also the other moment where Blanc is watching Duke watching Whiskey with Miles in like the bedroom, and what we think, what the viewer thinks is not the actuality, but it's more he's omitting some truth. Rather, he's just not showing us the whole image rather than showing us a distorted image. So I think he just has fun with that kind of thing, and I don't I don't have a problem with that at all because I never feel like I'm getting lied to. I feel like, oh, I just didn't know the whole, like the camera just didn't roll for the extra 5 seconds for me to get the full context or whatever it is.
Yeah, I'm all for it as well. I mean, I think that's just kind of trademark detective fiction, murder mystery. There's the misdirection in Glass Onion in particular, like you say, is crazy. Just like everything just is kind of zooming at you, and it's so interesting because that first half, in a way, kind of moves so slow, and then as it kind of reaches those climaxes, and things kind of start rolling. You have that great, that David Bowie song is going on, and it's kind of, it's kind of coming up to its slow finish and climax as Luke dies, and I think it's I'm good with it. I like it in this context. I won't say I like it all the time because I think it can be abused.
Sure.
But I agree. I think in Glass Onion, wherever else it was used in these movies, I think it was used to great effect.
Yeah, I may have misspoken. I don't know if he, I don't know if he does use it in the first one. Definitely uses it a lot in the second one. I know he does it in the third one. Mm-hmm. But my feeling about it, because I watched Glass Onion first when I was doing the rewatches, and I was like, at first I'm like, I don't like that. I don't like, But then I asked myself, like, well, how else would you want him to do it? Like, you want the camera to just be like, oh no, there's something wrong with the cameraman. We can't see what's happening. So it's a good watch, and it's effective. So I don't love it, but also I can't dislike it because it makes for a good movie for good storytelling techniques.
Yeah, for sure.
Really quickly on that. I did notice in Wake Up Dead Man, it seemed like, and maybe this was done intentionally, but it seemed like when Martha, not to be confused with Marta, when Martha is in the sarcophagus with Samson, but we think the first time it's Monsignor Wicks. The first time we see it, she seems to be, very frantically saying, "You shall rise again, you shall rise again." And then the second time we see it, she's very kind of tenderly telling him, "You shall rise again," and being very calm. Mm. And so, to me, there felt like there was a little bit of a disconnect there in regards to what you're talking about, Bo, where it's like, it seemed like it was shot differently, and it's not like, oh, we're watching the same thing just in a different context. It just seemed like it was just like a different take. And so I did notice that it didn't really stick with me as like a flaw necessarily, because and I'd probably have to watch it again just to kind of see that. Okay, so I think Judd's watching it the first time, but she's explaining it the second time, so it could be
right, yeah,
kind of fudging the perception depending on who's telling the story.
Yeah, no, but it does make you really pay a lot more attention depending on who's telling the story. You know what I mean? Yeah. Definitely does that.
And I think that I think is also key, because you're not, and it involves the viewer a lot more too, because you're like, you're not just watching what's being shown, you're watching what's being shown and thinking, okay, who's telling me this at this moment? Is this Benoit Blanc saying how, what happened, or what do you think happened? Is this, I love in Knives Out when every time they tell the story of their father's party, it's a different person sitting next to him smiling with the cake.
Yeah.
And so I guess it's kind of become a trademark of the movies, kind of this unreliable narrator aspect to it in select scenes.
Definitely. Well, we were talking too about the streaming era that we live in, and fortunately for us on this podcast, we have a media man who talks about all different types of forms of media. Joe, I'm curious to know your thoughts on media regarding this incredible Knives Out trilogy.
Well, let's first start out. So, is the year 2019, end of 2019, and Knives Out came out, and came out in the theater. I saw it in the theaters. It was an excellent theater going experience, I will say. And it was kind of business as usual. And then it had a physical release early 2020. And then 2022, Glass Onion comes out, and we're still kind of in this like I feel like studios and producers are still trying to decide, like, okay, what's going to be released in a theater? It's not like all theaters were shut down, I think, at that point. I think they're opening back up, but I think a lot of people had decided to just still release their movies on streaming services. Some, notably, I think Christopher Nolan, didn't he hold off?
He left Warner Brothers because they were forcing him to put Tenet on HBO Max. That's why he works with Universal now.
Mm.
And it's such an interesting saga, and I think that this deserves its own episode or two or three to kind of talk about, this fascinating era of filmmakers and streaming and theater releases. Anyways, so Glass Onion, released on Netflix. Knives Out by this time is on Prime, and then Wake Up Dead Man again 3 years later with Netflix, right? So we have one traditional release and then two streaming releases. But before I get too ahead of myself, I want to know you guys your thoughts on referring to Glass Onion and then Wake Up Dead Man as a quote unquote a Knives Out mystery.
I hate it. It's terrible, and I know that it was Netflix that did it, and it's unfortunate because they didn't trust. I don't know. I think it's stupid. At the very least, if they wanted to add a little tagline to make it into a series, why is it not called a Benoit Blanc mystery?
Benoit Blanc. I was.
And I know why. It's because Knives Out made a crap ton of money, and so they're banking on that name rather than on the name of the detective. But it's an unfortunate marketing choice, in my opinion.
I agree. Bo, if you love it, don't feel pressured to say that you agree. That. But
No. I think Trillian speaks for us all with that. That's yeah.
And so I just think, setting aside how we feel about the movies, we've talked about that. We love them. For those of you just joining us, we love all three of them.
If you've just tuned in.
I think that I know that Netflix has released some Netflix original movies have had physical releases. I think that these two movies, whether they're released individually or as a trilogy bundle, or as more keep coming out, if at the end, Rian Johnson says, in 10 years, hey, I'm done making Benoit Blanc / Knives Out movies. I think at some point it would be amazing to get these on a physical release.
Yeah.
And I from the aesthetic perspective, to have them all be in this nice box, kind of nice packaging, similar uniform across all of them, I think would be amazing.
Delightful.
People, I think, are really. I know filmmakers are, and serious cinephiles are really on board and pushing for like physical releases and theater releases and kind of that kind of traditional object that you can hold of a movie. And I'm all for it. I just want to set the precedent as the media guy. I love physical media. I love not just the bonus features that you get on it, the deleted scenes. I mean, all that is amazing, but There's something about there's something about having a movie that is yours, that you haven't rented the license to watch whenever the big company says you can watch it. It becomes it becomes part of your it's like a talisman that you have.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that's a fantastic word for it.
And so there is that disconnect between the three films that is all, it's political, it's, with whatever company was releasing it, but I have hopes for a future physical release for the two of them. I guess is the point that I'm getting to is that there will be a physical release someday, and it will not say a Knives Out trilogy, Knives Out, 8-pack. It'll say Benoit Blanc mystery, if it says anything, or just says Knives Out, just says Glass Onion, just says Wake Up Dead Man. But yeah.
Absolutely.
Truland, I want to, if I may, turn to you, because I think you probably know a little bit more about kind of the Netflix arrangements, agreements, and whatnot. Do you have anything that you'd add as far as how these movies were released?
Just that, I mean, it's an interesting conversation because obviously we have three movies, one that came out before COVID, one that came out during, and one that came out after, which I think is really interesting. But in terms of like theatrical and box office, it's not a good representation of three movies having released in those three eras. Knives Out's a really interesting case study though, because its budget was like, I think only 40 million. Obviously, this is always Hollywood numbers, so these are to be taken with a very large grain of salt. Reported budget was 40 million. It made 312, right? It came out like right before Thanksgiving and just stayed in theaters for like 2 months, 3 months, and just slowly made a crap ton of money. And Netflix saw the writing on the wall, and they were like, and they saw, number one as well, that Rian Johnson and Daniel Craig were like, we love doing this and we want to keep doing it. And so Netflix was like, yeah, we'll buy up whatever you're going to do next. And they do the obligatory thing that they do with these kind of higher profile movies where they will release it in theaters in a very limited release for a short amount of time, usually only 2 weeks. And I actually did see Glass Onion in theaters when it came out. We didn't get to Wake Up Dead Man, unfortunately, but I did see Glass Onion in theaters. And I mean, it was a similar budget, 40 million, but it only made 13 million. And then we look at Wake Up Dead Man. Also, these are Hollywood numbers, so who knows? A similar budget, 40 million, but only made 1.6 at the box office. So diminishing returns there. But it's just this really kind of weird thing where, like, you want these movies to be in theaters because you want more movies in theaters, but then also audiences have changed and their viewing habits have changed. And COVID changed a lot of the way that people watch movies and how they watch movies and where and why they watch movies. And so I do think this is an interesting example where you have Knives Out was doing this kind of old school, like early 2000s, 90s thing where it was like a movie that catered to, like, it was like a 4-quadrant movie in a lot of ways. And it just stayed in theaters and chugged and just made money, like, dollar after dollar after dollar. And that's just not the way that movies are put in theaters anymore. They don't sit in theaters for a long time and just make a ton of money unless they're like an Avatar or an Avengers, something that they want and hope that will make $1 billion. But these, like, $50 million movies that make 5 or 6 times their budget, really that's been like that's like the horror space now. That's where those movies are getting made, and that's where those budgets are getting put on, and that's how much money those movies are getting made. But like this kind of, like, I say a family movie, but it's like the kind of movie that I saw Glass Onion with my parents and my sister, and that kind of movie just doesn't exist anymore in the theaters. And it's really unfortunate, but like it is like it's this weird thing of like an Ouroboros of like, you know, to get into the mythicness of it, like
hey, that's my lane. What are you doing? What are you
like
doing?
the studios aren't releasing these movies into theaters, and so then audience goers don't go see these movies in theaters when they do show up, and so it is this Ouroboros snake eating its own tail scenario.
Well, hey, look, let's talk politics instead, because we had mentioned that there's
Sure.
kind of like some politics behind movie making now, and we can't end. Maybe we should end at least, because we're kind of almost to an hour and 12 minutes now. But the political Rian Johnson isn't afraid to like put politics in his movies, and you can tell that in all three. And I think it's really bold, especially with Wake Up Dead Man, because we know the climate we're in now. But he's still like, no, like these are real characters. They're your neighbors. We shouldn't be afraid of portraying them in any kind of way. And I agree with that. I think, though, that my favorite political experience with these movies is actually the first one. It's so good because I think it is such a good sort of microcosm, micro instance for what's happening on the macro scale, because you have a very entitled family on a homestead that are all expecting to be entitled to this wonderful inheritance, even though they don't value each other as human beings. Whereas the immigrant comes in, and because the father makes the decision to pass on his inheritance to the immigrant who comes from nothing but has a good heart. That just felt very timely to me when I was watching it.
Yeah, I think politics in these movies is as distinct a character as being a murder mystery itself, or Benoit Blanc, or the archetype we've seen as like the kind, good-hearted person that he works with. I feel like these kind of recurring types that we see. I definitely say, like, you could call it politics, but you call it current events, whatever. Like that is as predictable an element of a Benoit Blanc mystery as any other thing that you could expect in it, and I love it. I think he does. I think he does a good job in kind of addressing what he's addressing in each one of them. You do see a lot of similarities, a lot of carryover in the types of people that he plays and the types of issues that he's addressing in those people. Not necessarily a bad thing. And because I think probably in the last 6 years, I think it's been a pretty solid through line. But it'll be interesting to see kind of like, what comes in the next one. What
Is he?
will our world look like that will then be reflected in the next Benoit Blanc movie.
Do we know if he's doing a next one? I don't know.
I do not know. This one feels like, since this one just barely came out, I feel like anything would be more, in development of being in development, very just early stages, probably writing or storyboarding or something.
Yeah, I know he writes them quickly, and obviously with such a small budget, the turnaround can be pretty quick, which I think is great because he can kind of stay on topic and stay topical in general. I did just double check. So Netflix had bought the rights to Knives Out 2 and 3, but there has been no deal going like outside of 2 and 3. So I don't know what's going to happen going forward. But they did pay like $450 million for those two movies, which is an insane amount of money. And then didn't release them in theaters. So they didn't, and I can't imagine they made enough from subscribers to warrant a price tag that hefty. But I mean, good for him.
Yeah.
It just bothers me so much that they're not even in the same like streaming service. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
You're telling me if I want to
insane.
watch, Jaws 2, I gotta like go to a different streaming platform because Jaws 1's only on Prime, but Jaws 2 is on Netflix. What are we doing? Or God forbid the Harry Potter movies. Like,
Dude, those are a mess.
I gotta get 7 different streaming services for all 7 movies.
To
what are we
each one.
doing?
Yeah, it's
oh my
crazy.
gosh. No, I think this is a good place to wrap up. So we can say, how do we want to wrap up? We'll see you guys next time. Easy. Look, I'm not too worried about the ending because we can do the classic like fade where we should all 3 laugh. We should just start laughing and then we can fade out the laughing.